in the Navi Shir tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, as usual. We're going to start Ayin Aleph Amud Beis on the bottom, Amr Ula. Lemanda Asham Vadai Lo Ba'i Boy Yedibakila. So there's a machlok. So there are a number of Aveirot where the Torah specifically tells us to bring a korban asham. One of them is gzela. Another one is me'ila of hegdish, or if you have a relation with a shifcha charufa, that's a certain kind of shifcha that you could that was kiddushin was given over, let's say, to a son, and you had a relation with a shifcha charuf. There you have to bring a korban asham. So there's a machlokes that Rashi goes through between Rav Tarf and Rabbi Akiva in Masechta Krisus, whether you're machayev and asham if you're not sure that you did the aveira, if you're mesupik whether you did the aveira or not. So one mandomer says no, and one mandomer says yes. Now let's just remind ourselves that this is different than something called an asham tolui. An asham tolui is when you do something where you normally would bring a korban chatas, but it's a suffix if you should bring a korban chatas. For example, you have two pieces of fat in front of you, and you don't, and one of them is permitted fat, one of them is tuman, one of them is chaylet, and you eat one of the pieces. You don't know which one you ate. And someone comes to you and says, you know, one of those two pieces of fat was chaylev. And it's a suffix whether you ate the chaylev, whether you ate the permitted fat. In that case, you bring something called an asham tolu. That's a suspended asham. And that protects you until either Yom Kippur comes, and in some hold that Yom Kippur will be mechaper. And sometimes some say until you actually say, let's say 10 years from now, somebody shows up and says, you know, on that day when you ate that piece of fat and you didn't know which it was, I know for sure it was a piece of chaylev. Now, because you ate it besof, you didn't know it was chaylev, you bring a korban chatas. So the asham tolui suspended you until when you can bring the asham chatas. Or, if you never are informed about it, your misa is mechaper. That's how an asham tolui works. But we're not talking about an asham tolui, we're talking about an asham vadai, where you're mesupik if this was a shifcha charufa, or you're mesupik whether or not you violated me'ila or not. So there's a debate between Rav Tarf and Rabbi Akiva whether you bring an asham vadai or not. So Amar Ula, the man da Amar asham vadai loy boyadi b'tchila, the man da Amar who says that you don't have to know for sure whether you committed the aver, even if you're a mesupik, you bring an asham vadai according to that man da Amar. Boil chamish be'ilos b'shifcha charufa. You were a shogeg, and you had relations with a shifcha charufa, and each time you were informed, and then you forgot, you're only chayiv one. Because as we said, according to Manda Omar, you don't require yediyah betchila. Then even if it's like eating 5 pieces of kazayas chaylev in one helam, where you get you only have to bring one korban chayes. Maski for Ravuna, elameata. What about Baal, the chazer u Baal? And when he was told about it, hifrish korban, he was mafresh a korban asham. The Omar, he said, you know what? Hang on, hamtinu liad she'evo. You know what? Now that I was mafresh a korban, I'm going to have another be'ila with a shifcha charufa, and the korban will cover me. Are you telling me in that situation that's going to work? Absolutely, it shouldn't work. Once he was mafresh a korban already, and he does it again, he would have to bring a second korban. You're asking about a ma'isa that occurs after a first ma'isa. We're not talking about a ma'isa after. We're talking about before your mafresh a korban. Manda Omer, who holds that by an asham vada you don't require yediyah b'tchila, you can get away with one korban for 5 be'il. Kios Rav Dimi, Omar, when Rav Dimi came and heard the same sugya, Limanda Omar Osham Vade Bo Yedi Betchila, according to the Manda Omar who holds that by an Osham Vade, you have to know that you did enough favor. It's not a matter of you're Mesuk. In that situation, you each time you have Yediyah would be a Chalukah, and you'd end up, if you had 5 relationships with Shivcha Charufa with the Yediyah in between, you'd have to bring 5 Korbanei Chatas, 5 Oshams. Abaya says no. Harei Chatas. Now a Chatas definitely be in Yediyah Betchila. There, you have to, right? You did something b'shogeg, and then later on they tell you, you ate a piece of chayla. It's only then that you bring a korban. It's not by a korban chatas that you could bring a korban even b'sofei. Upliga Rabbi Yochanan ben Lakish, and yet we learned yesterday extensively the machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan ben Lakish, whether or not you would bring. There's still a machlokas regarding how many korbanos you would bring. So Ishtik, he didn't answer. Maybe Dilma b'maisa locha frasha ka'amrit, ukravluna. Perhaps the place where they're arguing, where one says you bring multiple korbanos, one say you don't, is after he was mafresh a korban, like Rav Amnuna said. That's correct. That's where they're arguing. Period. Ki also Ravinu Amar Hakol moedim b'shivcha charufa. Hakol moedim b'shivcha charufa. Umachloikes b'shivcha charufa. This is what he had received in the Surah. These 3 statements, that everyone agrees to something by shivcha charufa, that everybody agrees to something by shivcha charufa, and that there's a machlokas by shivcha charufa. And the Gemara will explain. The first hakol moedim b'shivcha charufa, de'eino chayv la'akas k'le'ula. That the way Ula explained, and according to Manda Omar, who holds that by an Osham Vada, you don't need a Yediyah Betchila, that person would hold, you're only chayav 1 for 5 Be'ilos, there's no machlokas regarding that. The way Rav Amnuna explained that a person had relationship with a Shivcha Charufa, and then he was told about it, and he was told that you have to be mafresh a korban, and he mafresh the korban, and then he said, I'm not going to offer the korban. Until I do another be'ila. There we said he's not allowed to do that. Once he's mafresh the korban, you got to bring another one. So everybody agrees to that concept as well that Rav Amnuna stipulated. And that which we said, machlokas b'shivcha charufa, regarding this Indian of bol chamesh be'ilos b'shivcha charufa chayav kolachas ve'achas, that's a machlokas. L'man dam rosham bari b'yidim b'chila machlokas Rabbi Yochanan ben Lakish, like we had over there in the second show. Period. Itmar. New sugya. Niskavein lahagbias atosh. So somebody had cut an ear of corn from the ground. So it's tolush. I'm allowed to pick something up in my backyard if it's tolush. And you have kavanah to pick something up. Meaning, you have kavanah to do something that's not osir on Shabbos. And he had a knife in his hand. For example, a knife fell in the garden, and you bent down and you wanted to pick up the knife. So there's nothing wrong with that on Shabbos. What he did, he used the knife and he cut something that was connected to the ground, which is kitsira. The din is potter. Says Rashi, "Dichsiv asher chata ba v'darshinam bekrisus prat lemisasek b'dover acher v'aser davar zeh." So, if you have kavanah to do something that's not a malacha, and you ended up doing a malacha, you're called a misasek. That's not a shogeg. So explains Rashi, v'shoigeg hechidami kigon sheniskavin lekach. He had kavanah to cut. Aval shogag the sovar she'ayom Shabbos. He thought today was Tuesday. Our regular understanding of a shogeg, we have 2 understandings of shogeg so far by Shabbos. Either you don't know, you forgot that today is Shabbos, or you forgot that this malacha is also on Shabbos. Those are the classic cases of shoygeg where you're going to bring a korban chatas. But if you had kavanah to lift something, you ended up cutting something, says the Gemara here, you're called a misasek. And a misasek is potter. V'zeh misasek bagboyi v'lo b'chati. That is l'chule alma. There's no machlokas regarding misasek that you're potter. Now comes the next case. So you have something on the ground that's already cut from the ground, so it's a tolush. I'm allowed to cut that. Like when they bring you a piece of tomato on Shabbos to your table, you're allowed to cut that. That's a tolush. So you had kavanah to cut, but your cutting was not a dvar iser. That was your kavanah. You ended up bending down and cutting something that was connected to the ground. Here we have a machlokas Abai and Rava. Rava Omar Potter, Abai Omar Chai. Rava Omar Potter, Tahalo Niskavin Lachaticha Disura. Yes, he was miskaving to cut, but he was not miskaving to cut a davar iser. You're allowed to cut a tomato on Shabbos that's tolush already from the ground. So according to Rava, that would not bring you to a chiyuv korban chatas. Abai Omar Chai. Yes, he had kavanah to cut. That's enough that if he ended up cutting something mechuber, it's going to give you a korban chatas. So that's a fundamental machlokas Abai and Rava regarding this issue. The Shulchan Aruch paskins, the Rambam paskins, niskavin lasos malacha shel heter b'Shabbos, right? Cutting something, something. If you have that kavanah of cutting something that was tolush, uvetolus also malacha iser, potter kedivrei Rava. We always throughout Shas. There are, I think, close to 350 machlokas Abai and Rava throughout Shas. And we paskin like Abaya in 6 places. Ya'al Kagam. We'll have one, Rashi will tell us which Ya'al Kagam, Yerushalayim Midas. That's the Yud in Ya'al Kagam. But it's very rare that we paskin like Abaya. Most times we paskin like Rav. When I say most, we're talking about over 95%, maybe even higher. Now, Amar Rava, Amin Allah. How do I know that this concept, if I'm iskavein for a chaticha leheter and I do a chaticha leisra, I'm potter? Where do I know that? From the Tanya, from the following beraisa. Chomer Shabbos mishar mitzvahs. Shabbos is more stringent than other mitzvahs. The chomer shar mitzvahs mishabbos, and in a certain way, other mitzvahs are more chomer than Shabbos. And let's see. Chomer Shabbos mishar mitzvahs. So, for example, if I do 2 prohibited malachas, I do katsira and I do tchina. On Shabbos, I'm chayav 2 different korbanos. Mashe enkein b'shar mitzvahs. For example, if I eat 2 kazesim of chalev in 1 helam, I only bring 1. That's l'chor what the Gemara is referring to here. That in that respect, Shabbos is more stringent. The chomer shar mitzvahs mishabbos, shebishar mitzvahs shogag below miskavein chayav. By other mitzvahs, and the Gemara will explain what we're talking about. If I'm a shogeg without kavanah, I'm still chayav. Mashe'en came b'Shabbos, that we have this concept where, in certain cases by Shabbos, I will, like Rava just said, I'm a shogeg as a misasek, I'm going to be put. And we'll have to see what the example of Bashar Mitzvahs is when we say Bashar Mitzvahs Shogeg B'la Miskavin Chai. Okay, so that's the beraisa that Rava brings to prove his case. Because otherwise it doesn't work. The case of Mashen King B'Shabbos describes Rava's case of being a misasek and you'd be put. Okay. Omar Mar. Omar Mar refers to when we quoted a baraisa, and we want to delve into this baraisa a little deeper. So the baraisa said, "Chomer Shabbos mishar mitzvah Shabbos also shtay be'elam echad chayv al kol achas v'achas." We say that on Shabbos, when you do two malachos, on Shabbos you're chayav to bring a korban chatas for both. Ma'ashein came mishar mitzvahs, and the Gemara wants you to explain what are we talking about hechidon. You did two different malachos, harvesting and grinding, which by shar mitzvahs would mean the kavosei, the analog by shar mitzvahs would be ochal chaylev dam, because those are two different averis, eating chaylev and eating dam. So what kind of differential it is? If I do tchina and ktsira, I'm chayiv two. If I eat chaylev and dam, I'm also chayiv two. There's two different averis. So what is the example by shar mitzvahs? That if I do two things, I'm only chayiv one chatis. Must be you're talking about the ochal chaylev v'chaylev in the same helen. That means in the same period of forgetfulness, I ate two kazei chaylev. Even if I ate 100 kazei chaylev, I'm only chayiv one chatis. So the kavosei gabi Shabbos, the ovad ktsira, also hachachadach v'chayiv. So if I do two averis of ktsira on Shabbos with one elam, even if I did 20 ktsiras in one elam, I'm only chayiv one. So hachachadach v'chayiv. So the Gemara now has pointed out to us, what do you mean there's a difference between Shabbos and shar mitzvahs? Chomer, Shabbos, shar mitzvahs, because this and this. We see by analyzing what must be these cases, they're both the same. Either you bring two for both or you bring one for both. L'olam says the Gemara, the Ovad Tzirot. No, we're talking about a case by Shabbos of Ovad, two different averis, harvesting and grinding. And therefore we know you bring two for that. Umay mashe enke b'shar mitzvahs. And when we compare and contrast it to shar mitzvahs, we're not talking about, in general, shar mitzvahs like chaylev and dam and other prohibitions. We're specifically speaking on avodah zarah. Because, gentlemen, the one aveira, or the one category that is similar to Shabbos, in that it has multiple malachos in it. So, for example, by Shabbos, we know there are 39 ways of violating Shabbos. So if I do 39 malachos, and I had forgotten about all 39, I have to bring 39 different korban chatas. There's one other kind of category of prohibition, which is similar, which is avodah zarah. Avodah zarah, there's shechting, being maktir, that means throwing on the fire, and pouring wine. So there are different avodot. And there's also going to be their avois and toldos. And there's going to be the same concept. If I'm shoygeg, if I'm amazing, I did 2 or 3, it's very similar to Shabbos. So the Gemara says, when we say here that the shar mitzvahs, that if I do 2 different things, I'm chayiv 1, is avodah zarah. Ravami. Ravami, zibeach v'kiter v'nisech. If I shechted, or I threw on the fire, or I poured wine, there it's not like Shabbos, where if I did 3 different avos malachos on Shabbos with one elam, I bring 3 different chatases. Here, if I do the 3 different types of avodot, by avodah zarah, I'm only chayiv 1. We'll see, it's machlokes. That's how Ravani holds. But according to Ravani, the Bryce is going to the way Ravani learns that there's a distinction between Shabbos and avodah zarah. Okay, so that somehow we've resuscitated our Bryce. The Bryce makes sense, at least in the ratio. So b'mai ukimta, how did you reconcile our Bryce by saying that shar mitzvahs is referring to what, gentlemen? Avodah zarah. Okay, ema seifa. then let's learn the seifa of the very same barais, where we said, Choymer b'shar mitzvahs, on the other hand, shar mitzvahs are more stringent than Shabbos. Shebishar mitzvahs, shogag b'lo miskavein chayiv, which was like Rava, that if I didn't have kavana, by Rava by Shabbos, that if I was shogeg in a way that I wanted to not to do a dvar isser, but I had when I wanted to cut the togush, I ended up cutting the mechuber on butter. The analog to that by the shar mitzvahs was shogag b'lo miskayin chayiv mashen king b'Shabbos. So now the Gemara wants to know, Hi shogag b'lo miskavin davar zorei chidanu. What's the example that you were a shogeg without kavana by avodah zarah that would make you chayiv a korban? So, so are we talking about a case where a man walks down the street and he sees a building and he thinks it's a shul, and he bows down to it, and it turns out that it's a church? So he's not going to be required to bring a chatas. Hare libo b'shamayim. He doesn't have any chiyuv. He has in mind that it's not as avodah zarah. And says Rashi, even if he knew it was a beis avodah zarah, but when he bowed down, he's having in mind bowing down to Hashem. That is not an avera that brings you a korban. Okay, let's try a different scenario. El de Chazi Andarta, he saw a statue. For example, Augustus Caesar, which they would build a statue for the king. V'sagid lay, and he bowed down to it, which normally people would, if they would walk by a statue of the king, they would sort of give honor to it, but there it's clearly he's not worshiping it as an elokus. Now, it was complicated in the Roman times because Augustus Caesar eventually declared himself a god. The Caesars eventually did declare himself a god. But so then that would not be just strictly l'shem malchus. Okay? But let's say in England, where there were statues of George VI, let's say, the English kings did not, at that point, they may have ruled by divine law. There was such a concept politically that their power came through divine authority. That, John Locke, that changed. It became more of a social contract, that the people accepted the government as someone who ruled over them. And so they didn't rule by divine authority anymore, and they certainly did not view themselves as gods anymore. And there, Rashi is referring to that as I'm saying, by the Roman Caesars, it's a little more complicated, because eventually they did declare themselves God. But let's go back to the Gemara. Now, if he actually bowed down to that statue and to accept it as his God, so that's not a shogeg mezid. So that would be amazing. You don't bring a korban as amazing. If there was Adim and Hasra, you would be put to death in Besdin. And if there were no Adim and Hasra, you're still amazing. You don't get a right to bring a korban for kapara. And if you did not accept it as your God and you just sort of bowed down to it in honor of the king, so lav klumu, that's nothing. So what's the example, says the Gemara, of shogag b'lo miskavein by avodah zarah that's going to make you chay? Ela me'avo me'yira. So what you did is you bowed down, me'avas adam. You have a very good friend who has convinced you to bow down. O me'yira something, or vice versa. You've got somebody who's threatening you. Yishtachav avodah zarah. And that's korele shogeg b'lo miskavein. Klomer shogeg b'hachi desvur kivan de'e miskavein libo lalakus mutter. He doesn't have his heart to the Avodah Zarah. He's doing it because he's either fearful or he's admiring somebody. So the same thing, the Gemara wants to say, this is an example of shogeg below kavana where you'd be chai. That would work only according to Abai Damar Chai. El Rav Damar Potter Michael Meimar. Now this statement of the Gemara, where we just said that Rava holds that your potter, if you worship Avodah Zarah, Meira, is very problematic because of the din of Yaharik Val Yavo. This Tosfos, we could spend a day learning this Tosfos, which deals with this issue. What do you mean? If Rava says your potter, if you worship Avodah Zarah, Meira, when will you ever have a case of Yaharik Val Yavo? Right? We know there are three Averas, Gilu Araya, Shrichus Damim, and Avodah Zarah, where if somebody comes and says, here, I have a gun against your head, bow down or I'm going to kill you. The din is you're supposed to allow yourself to be killed or they say, go murder this person or I'll kill you. You're supposed to allow yourself to be killed. Only three Averas. If someone puts a gun to your head and says, eat this chazer, you're allowed to eat the chazer because it's not Yaharik Val Yavor. Now, there's a Tosfos as well regarding that issue, that if it's public, if you're in a public space, you're also supposed to give your life up even for things that are not, even for regular lavim. But that's a very complicated sugya, which we're not going into. But even by Yaharik Val Yavor, this Rava, who says potter from Yira, is a grave issue. But they were then l'chatchila, you're also supposed to put yourself to kill. But if after the fact you come to Beis Din and you say that, yeah, he threatened me and I bowed down, that you would not be put to death. You'd be potter. According to Abai, you'd be chayiv in Beis Din. Anyways, that's when all is said and done, what that Tosfos comes out. So we're back to our case. How do you describe a case of shogeg b'lo miskayin that you're chayiv by Avodah Zarah? Elo says the Gemara, b'oimer mutter. Rashi says, "K'gon gershin is gayer ben anochri." You have a non-Jew who converted, but he never lived among Jews. Kisvor she'er Avodah Zarah, but he never heard of Avodah Zarah. The korele shogeg b'lo miskayin. And the Gemara is referring in that specific case to Oimer Mutter, and in that case, you would be a shogeg b'lo miskayin, and you'd be chayiv l'chul days. Mashe'en came b'Shabbos. So Gemara says, Mashe'en came b'Shabbos, the potter legamri. But in contradistinction to Avodah Zarah, if you were an Oimer Mutter by Shabbos, you would be potter. That means you wouldn't have to bring a korban if you claimed you never knew anything about Shabbos. Like an Oimer Mutter here by a Gershonish guy who never heard of Avodah Zarah. But that's going to be problematic. Because Ad kan like Boimine Rav and Rav Nachman Ela ilachayu v'chadi ilachayu v'tarti. Rava, where we had the Gemara a number of blot ago on Ayin on the basis Rashi, where we said Helam Zeb Zeb Yodo. He was forgetful about, he was a shogeg both by Shabbos and about the Malachos, where we asked, which is in our case, we doesn't know anything. Omer Mutter. Omer Ein Shabbos B'Torah, Hainu Helam Zeb Zeh. So Rashi explains that's the case of Helam Zeb Zeh. But Rava never said that you would be potter legamri. He was only mesupik. Are you chayiv one chatas? Are you chayiv two chatas? Avam potter legamri lo. So how can you explain our sugya here that Oimer Mutter by Shabbos is potter? It's not potter. So it comes out. Now we're on Ayin Gimel Amid Aleph